Welcome back to another episode of Wrist Check Podcast. The dynamic duo is back together again, and we've got a special guest. Allow us to introduce ourselves first.
I am Rashawn.
And I'm Perry. And this is WCP, Wrist Check Podcast. Tonight, we have a close friend of the pod. She's been on the show before as a guest co-host, but we've never had her as an official WCP guest. So you're an alumni of sorts, but we have Charity from Pulse on the Wrist.
Yeah.
Hey.
Welcome.
Hi.
I can't believe we hadn't done this sooner.
I know.
It's so funny. But, you know, as with all things, good things come to those who wait.
Yes.
And we've been waiting for a little bit, but this is going to be a lot of fun. And I'm really excited to have you tonight and get some your perspective in the watch world, which I'm always interested and delighted to hear. But also a little bit about your background. I'm excited to get into. And your perspective as a Brit.
You know the vibes.
Yeah. But you've seen the show, you know how this goes, and you've been on before.
I actually listen to the show when I get my lashes done. So, yeah.
Okay, so we're part of your beauty regimen.
You are, yes.
I love that. That's nice.
But we always start with the man who never repeats a watch for our honorary wrist check.
Yes.
Mr. Smith, what's on the wrist?
So I have something very, very special on the wrist, as always, right? I am wearing the True North collaboration with our good friend Eric Wynn.
Woo!
Perry has coined this one, the Wynn Toner, and he's also coined the albino the albino dial. Gotta represent. I decided to put this on the Worn and Wound Strap Habits collaboration strap.
It looks good on that strap, man.
It does, right? With all the pops of color.
A lot of
very
colors,
summery.
Yeah,
very summery.
Yeah, so like, I mean, it was definitely intentional. You know, this watch, every time I look down at it, I just get very, very happy with all the colors, and it kind of just brightens up my day.
It's brightening up my day. No, it's a great watch. We have both colorways. Shout out to Eric and Charlie.
Yes.
And our friends at True North Watch Company. It's a fun piece. I often wear it when I'm on daddy duty, kind of like my go-to dad watch right now. And no, it's a lot of fun. I'll go next. We'll save our guest of honor for last. She's got something special on the wrist. I'm wearing an oldie but goodie. Not that old. But I haven't worn this in a few weeks. We've been doing a fair bit of traveling and running around, and I kind of left this at home tucked away. But, you know, like the song goes, reunited and it feels so good. I'm wearing my AP 15510 ST, Royal Oak, blue dial. Not much else I can say. The gift that keeps on giving. When I look down to tell the time, I smile. And
And
yeah,
it's
I just love it.
gorgeous.
Thank you. It is. Yeah. It is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's my girlfriend. Yeah, she's a baddie.
We were talking about this watch off camera, and it was so funny. We'll save one half of it, but I'm very excited that you got this watch.
Still excited. It's hard to contain myself.
I think it's very exciting to have it, and I think a lot of people are happy that you have it as well. Especially to get a coveted piece like that as, you know, one of your first purchases from AP. But to be honest, you know, you put in the work, you put in the time. You know, we've said it over and over. I don't know how many episodes we've said it. The power of relationships.
Relationships are key.
It's key. And, you know, coming in and being, you know, a real, genuine person.
Facts.
You know, real recognize real.
Yeah.
That's all that could be said.
The realist.
And I remember when you first got it as well, like we were all just so excited for you, and it kind of is a reinforcer of the power of community. Like everyone just was like,
100%.
it was yours, it was ours. We were all just like in there for you.
Yes.
Man.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, she's good. Charity, what do you got in the wrist?
Okay, so today I have something special. A 1950s Bolivar.
Woo.
It's very, very cute. It's got a 14 karat gold strap. And yeah, it's really lovely. First and foremost, what brought me into watches is I am a history nerd. So I love Bulliver and like really old brands, and I love storied watches. And I think that's something that really marks and defines my journey as a collector, as an enthusiast, and just a nerd in the game.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I am a fan too of Bulova. They're a storied New York watch brand with amazing history and contributions to horology. But one of the things that they did really well, and they recently had a couple of new releases, and they're going back to their roots, cocktail watches.
Yes.
They do an amazing job with cocktail watches. Some like really beautiful stuff out there, vintage and now modern, because they just issued a new line of some cocktail pieces.
Yeah, they have a really fun line for the summer, which I'm about to get hands-on with very soon. I know, was it last year or the year before, they re-released the American Girl, which is like an absolute staple. And being the history nerd that I am, like I remember, finding vintage Bulliver ads, and they used to advertise in like Ebony and Jet magazine.
Isn't that so cool?
Yeah, super duper cool. The only thing about vintage watches of this era is people weren't eating, so the wrist watches are tiny.
Yes,
But no, I found a really good one. This one was given to me by my friend Christopher, and he sells watches. He sells vintage watches, so it's it's very special, because I think there's something to be said about watches with like a storied history and kind of been worn in as well.
I would agree. Shout out to Bulova. TJ, you're welcome.
We love TJ.
Yeah, TJ's the best. All right, you guys, let's talk about something every watch collector can relate to. When you're on the hunt for the piece, you slid into DMs, combed through the forums, maybe even hit up a friend of a friend, and still nothing.
And that's where Bezel comes in. It's not just another marketplace. It's where tech meets tradition. Whether you're after a Rolex sub or independent grail, Bezel has tens of thousands of authenticated listings waiting for you. And if the watch isn't listed yet, no worries. Just add the model to your wish list, and Bezel hits you with real-time notifications the moment something drops.
And for those of you who don't have time to obsess over listings 24/7, Bezel's got a concierge team that can source the watch for you. They basically take all the stress out of the process, so you can just enjoy the watch on your wrist.
Plus, for sellers, guarantee sales in just a few days. Thanks to the auction feature, it's a win-win, whether you're buying or selling.
So if you're ready to make your next move in this watch game, hit up Bezel, and trust me, you'll wish you'd done it sooner. All right, getting into things. I remember we've been doing this for a couple of years now, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen a lot of people come, a lot of people go.
You were gonna go there.
That tickles him for some reason, I don't know.
Okay.
However, I don't. I vaguely remember the first time we met. Yeah, you're someone who's. It seems like you've always been there, and so one of the things we never really got to talk about. I do remember like you hitting the scene and going full throttle with pulse on the wrist, but I don't quite remember or recall us ever having a conversation about how you actually got into watches.
I remember when we met.
Okay, tell me.
So I always say, like, I kind of fell into watches. It was what I like to call a very happy accident. So 2021-ish, I was, it was still kind of COVID-y in New York. Things were kind of open, but not really. And so spending a lot of time indoors, spending a lot of time with my neighbors. And one of my really dear friends, who was also my neighbor, he had an AP Royal Oak. And I was like, what is it about this watch that Jay-Z raps about, etc. And we were going bar for bar with different videos and just going really immersing ourselves in lyrics and, music. And, they became this long history of lyrics, mentions, watches, etc. And I, like every good student, I enrolled into YouTube University.
Sure, yeah.
And I started just watching lots of really great creators out there, Jenny L and Teddy Baldassare. And I was just watching a lot of content and really soaking it up. And so that was 2021, 2022. I went to Watch Time, which is, a big conference in New York around watches. And I was like, I want to see and touch and, feel stuff and, really get to grips with, watches. Because it was this really cool thing. But I was like, the history is really cool, but let's see it. Let's get tangible. And the one panel I made it on the day was featuring yourself. It was featuring Jason from Complecto, Kathleen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And being me, I never leave a room without asking a question. So I asked a question and I connected with you all. And it was kind of the beginning. You all were like, oh, we've got this coming up. You should pull up. And so my first watch thing that I went to was a Complecto event, and the community was just so welcoming, so embracing, and I kind of just never left. So I started going to watch events, and my co-workers were like, you're going to a watch thing? And I'm like, yeah, I do this really nerdy thing. And and it just became a lot of fun. So after about 6 months, I just started documenting it. And that's how Pulse on the Wrist was born.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. I was gonna chime in on, I remember when we first met, we had met at Watches of Switzerland. I think it was a GPHG event, or it was something like that. Maybe you leased not in, but it was like a big event. And you had came on the scene. You were definitely very vocal about like your curiosity, because I think this was around the time you were just getting into watches. And what I enjoyed about our conversation was that you were very learned and kind of taking notes and actually like sitting there like, oh, okay, I'm going to research this. I'm going to look into this and I want to try this on. Like, tell me about this. I want to know the history. And what's very impressive is the fact that you've just gotten into this hobby, but you're considered almost like a watch expert to most. You're someone that we can look to for, what's happening in the what's what in like pop culture and in the watch world. So I have to say I dig it.
Thank you.
I have another question for you, because I kind of want to get a little deeper into this. So please bear with me. But I'm curious, like, it's one thing to go to a watch meet. It's another thing to go to like Watch Time and like participate in that way. But like, you at some point made the transition of like, okay, I'm going to try my hand at like creating content and like sort of developing a voice.
Yeah.
What prompted you to do that? Because that is a very big leap, especially for someone who had just come into the industry to then say like, I'm going to sort of create a voice. What did you feel the industry was missing? I guess the question is that you thought you could provide some perspective on.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm a storyteller. Like I mentioned, I'm a history nerd. Like what draws me to like history, culture, and all of that stuff is the stories. Your life is a collection of stories, moments in time, memories, etc. And so with watches, it wasn't just, taking a pretty picture and putting it up. Like I really needed to learn why, like who wore it, why they wore it, etc. And like one of the big underlying elements of Pulse on the Wrist is, my curiosity for, how women like me used to wear watches over time, right? Yeah. And so I remember, I think it was last year or the year before, I found a really old picture of Pam Grier, and she was at a basketball game in the early 2000s or late 90s, and she was wearing a Chariol watch. And I'd never come across this brand before. And so like there's a big element of discovery and just like for me, I wanted something that resonated with me and my story and how I see the world and the lens that I bring to the world as well. I think it's a really exciting space and time that like more and more female voices are emerging, but no one can tell a story the way that I can. And that was the thing that I felt like I added, like I love the fact that, I work with, so many different people and encounter so many different people. And I consider you guys my brothers, and like we've had so many memories together, but your unique superpower is your own voice. Yes. And so I just kind of, I yap for a living, I don't know all of that stuff. So it kind of came naturally, but it felt like a story I needed to tell. And that's kind of what started the journey.
Okay, so I want to ask because you know, when I look at your content, it's very different from everyone else, and I feel like you have definitely separated yourself from other content creators in terms of the stories that you tell. Do you know or remember your breakout moment when your content caught fire and you were kind of regarded as a watch influencer?
So the moment that really surprised me was this was I think 2023, and you know I post like if you follow my content, you know I post in the morning because
Yes.
I have a day job. I have a 9 to 5, so I'm up super early. I exercise in the morning and I post in the morning. So like that's my daily routine. And I had an email come up in the morning one of the days, and someone was like, "Hey, I work for Marie Claire, and you know I want to feature you in this thing." And I was like, I forget that people are watching what I'm doing. I'm just putting out content. And for me, that you know that moment was like, oh, like people are really paying attention, people are really, you know, seeing what I'm doing. And she came to me, the reporter came to me, and she was like, she had seen one of my TikToks, and I'm like, oh, like I'm literally just having fun, like I'm just posting and going, and you know that issue was really important. I think the reporter's name was Emma, and you know Nikki Oganaike had just taken over the helm of the magazine, and it was an issue that had Issa Rae on the cover. So I just was like, wow,
I remember
like
when that dropped. That
yeah, I was
huge.
like, oh, this is sick.
Yeah.
So it was just an amazing moment of, you know, keep going because people are paying attention, and the amount of DMs I get of like, you know, no one else is doing it like this, or like it was really cool that you did this, or like you posted this and I bought this. I think that makes it worthwhile to me because you know, adornment is such an important theme for you know many of us, and so being able to like really figure out what is my style, what do I like, how does it come together, and that's kind of the lens that I try and approach it with.
I think adornment is like adornment is such a great word to associate with your brand Pulse on the Wrist, because I think just knowing you and knowing you know how passionate you are about the luxury space and storytelling within that space and identity within that space. Pulse on the Wrist conjures up more, I think, than just timepieces, right? It makes me think of like jewelry, makes me think of accessories, and more. Can you sort of elaborate on why that's important for you to sort of expand a broader conversation of luxury, especially as it pertains to maybe people and women of color?
Yeah. So I was born in Zimbabwe. I'm Zimbabwean, and I have, you know, I grew up in the UK around a lot of my friends from, you know, West Africa, from the Caribbean, etc. And adornment is such a big part of who we are. It's such a big part of, you know, watching my aunties get dressed up and wear their big earrings, and, you know, like just wanting, you know, to look fabulous and put something on. Like, you know, people talk about putting that shit on, and like that is kind of like what a lot
It's
of
one
us
of my favorite expressions.
see. A lot of us grow up seeing and aspiring to that. And I think what I personally found within my journey is like a lot of my friends, a lot of my girlfriends were getting to a stage where like they're either graduating or getting married or celebrating a promotion, celebrating a divorce, celebrating a new baby, and, you know, have money, but, you know, don't necessarily know like where to go in terms of like purchasing something that encapsulates a moment. So, you know, helping people understand, you know, it's not just about, you know, something shiny that looks great. It's about the story and the feeling that's behind it. And so just being able to kind of think through adornment, whether it's, you know, a watch that connects to your earrings or your rings. Like for me, I think a lot about what I accessorize with through the lens of, you know, how is it going to come together with my look?
Yeah.
So a lot of the times, like even today, I'm wearing earrings by Saint Kojo. Saint Kojo is one of my girlfriend's brands. She's Ghanaian and she wears a lot of pearls and she incorporates a lot of pearl jewelry in her looks. So I think about, okay, how is that going to attach to the watch I wear, to the, you know, to the outfit? Like, how does it all go together? And I feel like sometimes the watch industry, it will show you a wrist shot, but it won't zoom out to show you how does that fit into the wider aesthetic and the mood, and like how does it create a vibe. And I think a lot of people shop in terms of vibes and aesthetics, and so the conversation needed to zoom out a little bit, which is why, you know, I talk through some of those themes.
No, I love that, because I think what I do really enjoy about your content is as you've become more educated about watches, there's no reason for you to kind of go beyond where your audience is, in terms of like, you can talk about complications,
Yeah.
you can talk about the technical aspects, finishing and stuff like that. And that's all great, but that's not necessarily the audience that you're cultivating. The audience that you're cultivating, I think to your point, is much more interested in a vibe. They love watches. They want to know the heritage and the history, but what's really important to them are these sort of artistic sensibilities, right? How does this fit into my life?
Yeah.
What does this mean in terms of how I want to present myself? Thoughts about self-expression, and ultimately how they want to shape themselves. And I find that really interesting. I want to ask you, you know, from when you first entered the industry, one of the things I always ask people is, you know, what's one of the things that surprised you about coming into the watch luxury industry when you finally got there? Like, being from the outside, like, okay, I think I know what's going on here. And then you get in and you're like, oh, what was the, oh?
I mean, do you know what? I knew nothing before coming in. So I had no expectations, no anything. I think what's been really heartwarming for me is like how welcoming everybody is, how collaborative everybody is. And I think, you know, you were talking about, you know, me being from across the pond. One of the things that I love about being in America, which, you know, I've been in the States for 10 years, you know, and so one of the things that's kept me here is the collaborative spirit. Everyone wants to put someone else on. Everyone is like, hey, come to this thing, do this thing. Like, hey, I thought of you for this.
And I do kind of think that's a uniquely New York thing.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
And it's because New York, like everything kind of snowballs. You're invited to one event, or like, I don't know, like you guys might remember pre-COVID, you would finish work, you would go to a happy hour, you'd be at somebody else's happy hour, you'd be at somebody, like it just kind of snowballs. And that's kind of coming
On a
back.
Monday.
Exactly. Exactly.
Sure.
I have
sure.
stories for days from like 2015, but yeah, like it kind of snowballs. And, you know, just even in the creator space, thinking through, you know, you guys and like being able to work with you guys and show up to events, but also think through like people like Georgia, people like Ben's Watches, people, you know, like we're all in this together. And I think that's been really amazing, because I don't know if it's the same in other creative spaces, but it's something the watch world is particularly, you know, receptive and welcome to.
Yeah. Something that came to mind, I was thinking about when you were talking about how you've kind of gotten into this and how it's escalated very quickly. Have you been able to look back at where you started and kind of see where you are and relish the moment? Like, I think in terms of like content creation, like, you know, we never really get an opportunity to celebrate the wins. Like, it's like, great, you know, we landed that guest, we landed that article, but then it doesn't stop. It's like, I can't celebrate. I have to find the next one.
Yeah. I mean, I am a huge advocate of pausing and staying put for a second, both in terms of like mental health and that whole conversation around burnout and, you know, all of that stuff. Like just being present and sitting with your feelings, sitting in the moment and looking around, I think is really important. And for me, I'm also very big on celebrating things, celebrating my friends, celebrating people, shouting people out. Life moves so quickly, and it's very easy to like be like done with something really quickly. So I remember last year, for example, I celebrated 1 year of Pulse on the Wrist, the page, and, you know, filled a room of like female collectors, you know, people who've like been supporting me, people who have been DMing me for like over a year, and that was the first time we met. So I try as much as possible to get people together and just like be like, hey guys, we did this. It wasn't like, I'm not talking in a vacuum. It's, you know, we did this. And I have those moments as well when I go to like different events. I remember going to Afrotech and someone being like, are you Pulse Norris? I was like, oh my God. I was like, oh my God, you know my name. So just trying as much as possible to be present in the moment, but also taking pause for when things happen. Like I celebrate like every 1,000 followers I get. I'm like, oh my God, you know, because to think about it in like, once you take yourself out of the digital world, you're like, yo, filling 1,000 people in a room, filling 2,000, 3,000, whatever. It's a lot of people.
Yes.
And so just those milestones and knowing that I'm doing this by myself. Like there is no, you know, massive production or whatever. Like this is off my own back, off my own wit, off my own ideas. Like I think also kind of is part of the journey.
All right, let's be real. Buying watches can be a little stressful. You're navigating through a sea of listings, wondering if that mint condition piece is really mint, hoping you're not about to drop some serious cash on something sketchy.
Into Bezel. These guys built a platform where every watch goes through an authentication process. We're talking old school watchmakers who know their stuff, checking every detail. They even smell the papers. And no, I'm not kidding.
And here's the kicker. Bezel isn't just for seasoned collectors. Whether you're spending $1,000 or $100,000, they've got a high-touch concierge service that will guide you through the entire process. You get a real human interaction, not some chatbot giving you the runaround.
And if you're selling, their auction platform guarantees a sale in days, not months. So whether you're adding or offloading, Bezel makes sure it's smooth sailing.
So next time you're eyeing that dream piece or looking to make room for a new one, check out Bezel. They've taken the hassle out of collecting so you can just enjoy the journey. That's awesome. I'm curious how your time spent in the industry now for these last couple of years has shaped your approach to purchasing and maybe even collecting watches.
Yeah, I would say for me, and this is kind of like also zooming out from a trends perspective, I love like storied watches. I think I've already mentioned that. And a lot of the stuff that I look at and a lot of the stuff I have in my collection is pre-owned because, you know, A, it's a more accessible price point for the most part. But also B, I think they used to make watches back in the day a little bit better than they do now. And it's not to say that there isn't great stuff out on the market, but for me and the vibe and the aesthetic I'm trying to create, like I love like the small, dainty, cutesy watches. But I also am like, this is a journey, right? And I'm also thinking about, you know, marking occasions with different things and building up to different things. And I have had the privilege of trying on so many different things that like I already know, like, okay, this doesn't work for me, this doesn't rock with me, but there's certain things that speak to me. So in my collection,
I'm curious here, like, so you brought a couple of pieces with you. What's the most storied piece here? Maybe in terms of what you learned, but also like in personal meaning to you.
Yeah. So one of my favorite pieces is I have a 1980s JLC. And
let's pull this up.
I picked that up in Japan at the top of last year. Yeah.
Okay.
While everything was still booming and everyone's doing all the what to shop for in Japan content, I had the you know, opportunity to go out there, and I went to lots of different shops, and my experiences as a girl in these shops was very different and very interesting. But I went to the store called Fire Kids, and I did a video about this as well.
I think I remember that one.
Yeah. Fire Kids has a really great selection. And this one spoke to me because it has this really cool, like, black but brown dial.
Yeah, this is like a stone. This is a stone dial.
It's a stone dial. It's really interesting. The strap is gorgeous. And again, I think of details, everything down to like the strap. Like the strap looks great on my skin. It's, you know, an 18 karat gold watch, and it's small and it's unassuming. And a lot of the times being a New Yorker, some of the things I think about is also, are people going to recognize this on the subway? Because I need to be able to get home. So, you know, having stuff like this is, you know, really important to me. And that watch in particular will always remind me to that time that I went to Japan, I went snowboarding. I've never seen so much snow in my life. And I came back on the plane with this watch. Wow. So I think about things like that in my purchase journey as well.
This is one of my favorite watches that you own. Do you know what stone this is?
No.
We
But if
gotta-
anyone does, let us know.
Okay, we got to figure this out. But this is a gorgeous watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a little cushion case with the step bezel. Mm-hmm. And, it's funny because we were talking about JLC the other day. And, everyone knows them for the Reverso today. And they're finally getting, I guess, some of the respect that they deserve, mainly because I think that's a really popular style. But I think oftentimes enthusiasts and collectors forget. And, the broader audience doesn't realize or know that JLC is like one of the companies that's accredited with producing the most calibers
Yeah.
to be used by the industry.
Yeah.
And then
Aren't they the watchmaker's watchmaker?
Yes.
that's how people kind of refer to them. I mean, you think about like the Holy Trinity, Patek, AP, and Vacheron.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, many of the most iconic watches that those companies produced had JLC movements.
Yeah.
in them.
Yeah. Especially
You know
the
what I'm
ultra
saying?
thins. All of the thin
all,
movements.
all of the thin movements were JLC movements, and something that they did it exceptionally well. I think this is obviously a manual wound movement, but I mean, look at the size of this thing. This thing is
tiny.
it's tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They're just masters of watchmaking.
Yeah.
And I think just the color scheme here with the strap and the watch and the dial. I mean, this thing is killer.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful piece.
It's one of my favorites, and I love I'm a strap girl, and that's one of the things that I learned as well. Like along my journey, finding out like people like Josephine Baker, she used to wear like a Cartier Benoit on a black strap, and things like that, where it's just like, yeah, this is in my grown woman era. I'm wearing my watch, and it's unassuming, but it's also really practical, and you can wear it on the go. One of my other favorite timepieces in my collection is my vintage Movado. That was when I started, just after Watch Time actually, where I was like, okay, I want to buy something. I want to get something that I can wear every day, but I want it to be two-tone because I need it to work with my jewelry.
Okay.
Having a two-tone watch was very important to me. And what I love about Movado is like their design DNA includes a very faceless, design, similar to the JLC, like no indices, no nothing. It's
So I am
very
curious
simple.
about that too, because the Movado Museum is a classic piece. Did you how much did you know about the brand and this model before diving in, or was it something that was just kind of like it spoke to you aesthetically?
It spoke to me more than I knew about the brand, and so it also sparked me doing much more research into it. I have a interesting fascination with American watch brands because I feel like they've kind of died a little bit, and like
It
there's
feels that way, doesn't it?
yeah there's something to be said there, but like their history and their catalogs are so expansive. So a museum I think is like a staple. I loved the size. I thought it was really cute. It works so much with so many of different things that I have in my collection. And so it was just something that I was like, okay, this is a great like everyday on the go watch that I really liked. And so yeah, that's kind of why I picked it.
Yeah. And what's the, do you know like the time period of this watch?
No, I don't have that, but
Yeah.
I did.
I mean, just looking at that, I can tell it's 90s.
Yeah, I would say 90s, early 2000s.
90s.
That makes sense.
The cool thing is too, like with Movado, and the reason why I asked that question is because I think that there's something to be said for the Movado Museum in terms of a conversation regarding design. They got it right,
Absolutely.
and it's a watch brand that today, I mean, they're still known the world over. People know the name more so than I think they know the product, at least in mainstream circles.
Yep.
But when you see a Movado Museum, there's something about that watch I think is undeniable in terms of its beauty. And you see it and you go, man, it's a nice watch. And it's almost like the perfect gateway
Yes.
into luxury
Yep.
timepieces. Regardless of its accessibility in terms of price point, the design language on a variety of models under the Movado Museum have something about it that is very Cartier-esque
Yes.
that I absolutely adore.
Yeah.
Very much so. And it's a classic, it's a staple, it's understated. The dial is completely like it just draws you in.
Yeah.
And I think it's beautiful.
You know, referring to, you know, timepieces speaking to you or brands speaking to you, is there any brands that you feel that are doing it right, or brands where you feel like you could lend your type of insight? I mean, obviously, you know, if you could speak to a brand directly, you know, not to, you know, if you don't want to call anyone out directly, I'm just
Call 'em
saying
out.
more.
I'm all about calling people out.
Like, you know, just more in terms of, you know, I mean, if we'll go there, for example,
I'm there. I live there.
because I want to get your take on this, because I think this one is one that's been like burning me up for a very long time. When I seen the campaign with Omega and Ashley Graham and
You won't let this
Thames
go, by the way.
in Japan, like I just cannot let it go. It bothers me so
it looked
much.
like a great trip.
It looked amazing, but I think in terms of just like the brand association, like I think the two best people you can get, but then you can kind of see, if you peel back the layers, you kind of feel like, okay, this is a bit gimmicky, right? Like if you want to get a different demographic and audience, like you want to put them in their natural habitat. Like, you know, dropping Thames in Japan like makes no sense at all.
But here's the thing. So in my day job, I work in PR. So I'm a PR girl, and my background is also marketing. So I think about this not only as a content creator and consumer, but also like on the back end, like what's happening. And I think the Omega watch itself is beautiful. And I think the range and the diversity of women that they picked is phenomenal. But to your point, I think maybe thinking long term and long tail, and maybe they are, and we just haven't seen it yet. But to your point, like take Thames on tour and, you know, like see her and the watch in action, or like break down like how the watch is made, like what makes it special, like why, you know, Ashley Graham picked the version that she picked. So I think there's a little bit more of the storytelling element when it comes to watches and you know, that whole kind of marketing part of it that isn't necessarily coming through. And I think when I think about my content specifically, I try and tell the 360 story a little bit more in the sense of like, everyone, you see a lot of the watch pages go viral because they tell you this watch is $450,000. Okay.
Yes.
So now you know the price, but did you know that, you know, so-and-so did this behind the scenes, or like they were at this thing? Like I think about, there is a picture in my head. I can't remember what the exact watch was, but it was Toni Braxton and Dennis Rodman in the 90s. And, you know, they just come from the VMAs. They were in a pizza shop in the New York somewhere. And it was the aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think right now we're at an inflection point and a moment where nostalgia is really big, and nostalgia is coming back. It's both the sense that, you know, Gen Z are craving things that they didn't know and didn't access, whether it's like Tamagotchis or, you know, like cameras,
It's so crazy to
you
see
know,
this
things
stuff.
like that are now like vintage and relics, which we kind of grew up with. But then at the same time, you have millennials who also have a massive spending power, who, you know, miss the olden days, who miss, you know, the times of like simplicity and being offline. So how do you mesh the two? How do you mesh, you know, storytelling in a way that feels real, authentic, and can get people, you know, tug at their heartstrings and also educate, but at the
That's
same
a
time,
great point.
like go back to the basics. Because why that watch, going back to Omega, why that watch is so important. And also looking at the red carpet, you have people like Nicole Kidman wearing 1920s cocktail watches, and they pop because people want the old stuff. But like, how do you storytell around that?
That's such an amazing point, and it's on target, and it's part of the reason why I'm so critical with Rolex today. Because when I think about Rolex today, there is no storytelling. There's nothing that they're doing that tugs at the heartstrings. It's just the brand that you have to have because it's the symbol of luxury watchmaking, right? But this is why I'm in love with vintage Rolex, to your point, with the Nicole Kidman 1920s cocktail, because there's something about that that's romantic. And when I think about what is romantic about that, it's what I saw growing up as a kid.
Yeah.
The thoughts that I had about Rolex when I saw it in films, when I saw it on people that I admired, whether they were actors or athletes, seeing it in television shows, seeing commercials, advertising, that was so cool. Versus you look at a lot of what they do today, and it's like a coming attractions movie, but it's just pictures of the watch. And like, I don't, like, where is the connectivity? Because, you know, people are having trouble going into shops and getting your watch. So if you're not giving them any romance, what are they leaving with?
Yeah.
Just a bad experience.
Yeah.
Right. So I absolutely love that point. I want to get into trends. And I think first, I want to get a sense of what you're seeing happening right now that you love and hope sticks around, right? Considering Gen Z, I think this is a good topic. And then I'm interested in seeing and hearing maybe some that you would like, you know, kick the curb.
Okay. I'll start with, well, we've talked already about vintage, right? Like everyone's talking about how vintage watches are in. The reason why they're in is because people can afford that.
Yeah.
It's what people can afford. But also, to your point, there's a romance attached to it.
Right.
Like, I think through like the vintage catalogs of like AP. I think through even like older jewelry brands, thinking through like women's watches specifically, older jewelry brands that like maybe aren't as prevalent in America. OJ Perrin, you know, like there's so many brands where it's like they did beautiful watches back in the day that are probably slightly more accessible now than they were in the 90s and the 80s, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, even like Pierre Cardin is like watches having a moment for a while now.
And you can pick them up sometimes at a flea market and like in other places where it's like it's not in your face, but like it's accessible. So I like the fact that vintage is coming in and coming back, and you think through, you know, one of the biggest drivers of consumerism is, you know, celebrity power and, you know, influencers. So you think through Rihanna broke the internet wearing a choker as a necklace, and then Taylor Swift did it. And then, you know, like that snowball effect of like, okay, how do I accessorize this and make this my own in like a different way? And we're seeing that also within the world of fashion. Like people are remixing, you know, they're wearing shirts as skirts, you know, they're wearing, you know, bandanas as tops. Like there's an element of like personalization, but also trying to think through how to make something that's old and bring a different new life to it. So I think the idea of vintage being around and thinking through how to make these old pieces unique, relevant, and like hot in new ways, I think is really cool. And I love to see more of it. I love to see people, you know, wearing chokers as watches or like creating, you know, watch chains out of, you know, vintage pieces.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I think I saw a video with Will Smith recently where he was wearing a pocket watch around his neck.
Yeah.
That I think is also cool. The fact that pocket watches are coming back, and again, thinking with the Gen Z lens, like you think about bag chains, bag charms are coming back again. And for
the boo-boo.
Yeah.
Don't get me started.
So that's a good point when you bring up Will Smith, because what I want to ask you, Charity, do you think that it is the individual endorsing this brand that makes it hot more than the brand having a hand in it? And the reason why I ask that is because we know the individuals that consult with Will Smith, they are not paid by these brands to wear these watches. So if these are people of influence that are being influenced by influencers, I mean, do the brands really have the power that they believe that they do?
I think that's a great question. I think that it's a mixture, right? Because the biggest currency right now is authenticity. That's what people are buying, whether it's celebrities or influencers or, you know, your neighbor down the street. Like, it's authenticity. Do people buy into the story that you're selling, and do they believe it, right? And so when you think through specifically like how I think about it, Rihanna, long-term watch collector, even if Jacob & Co. put a watch on her, like she thinks that's hot and she's gonna wear it. So it's not necessarily about the transactional element of it. It's like how she's kind of thought through her look and brought it together. And you think about, other people where it's like, it's just another thing on their wrist. It's just another, and that doesn't resonate in the same way. So it's thinking through, how do people make this their own, and how do they make it hot based on like their personal style? And so thinking to the point we were talking about, when you think about a campaign, it's thinking about, okay, how do you draw the authentic story out of it? And I think that's kind of the tension that's being figured out, and it's a journey.
Yeah. What are some trends that you'd like to see go away?
Let me think. I definitely think that this whole conversation around like gender and size, and I'm like, I hear a lot of men saying, I'm wearing a women's watch or whatever. Like, listen, people will wear what they want, and they should wear what they want. There's people, I think, through like a Big Sean. Big Sean was wearing a women's Cartier watch. It looked fire. It looked really great on him. Timothée Chalamet is another one. He's not gonna wear a big Rolex Daytona.
No, I think there's a picture of him wearing a Panther.
Yeah,
and it looked cool.
Exactly.
He actually made it look cool.
Damson Idris is another one where it's just like you wear what fits you, what fits your aesthetic, what fits your vibe. And I think this kind of divisive language is not helpful, and the divisive lens is not helpful. It's okay to share your watch with your boyfriend and girlfriend and like your wife, whatever it is. So I think that's something that needs to kind of go. And also, I think we were talking about this off camera about the price tag, right? I think watches, jewelry, necklaces, whatever it is, like, are an investment into a moment.
Yeah.
They're an investment literally into time, right? And so when I think about that, like people talk to me and they're like, I don't have money for a Rolex, da, da, da. And I'm like, you don't need to. I think about some of the watches that I have, and, I have a G-Shock that I absolutely love.
Several.
Yeah, that I absolutely love, but I will wear it with my pearls because it's this big rugged G-Shock, but like I want to make it my own. And it didn't cost like an arm and a leg. But then at the same time, I have like $3,000-$4,000 watches that, also mean something to me and are, a marker of time. So it's about appreciating the fact that like you're depositing, investments into the bank of you. You're depositing investments into your memory bank. And whether you buy something for $50 at a flea market or you buy a, $500,000 watch, like it's all deposits into your memories. And I think it's, a beautiful thing to embrace.
It's funny too, because, with all the talk about like ladies' watches versus women's watches, people either forget or they just don't know that that's a conversation that's always evolved. Right? The wristwatch originally in concept was what women wore.
Yeah.
Yes.
Women wore wristwatches. Men wore pocket watches. Right? It wasn't until the First World War or the Great War when if I gotta hold my gun and I want to know the time, I'm gonna throw it on the strap and put it on my wrist.
Yeah.
Like that was literally the reason why men started wearing wristwatches. Which is the association with wristwatches and like military. So it's just interesting how the conversation evolves, because what we talk about often when I chat with collectors and we start talking about sizes, there are all sorts of variables, right? It's like, why are you gonna gender a watch based on size? It's kind of insane and crazy. Like, first of all, if you're talking about width, like that doesn't really mean a whole lot because you're going this way on your arm. You want to consider the lug to lug, which matters more, which really takes into consideration, not only the actual size of your wrist, but the shape of your wrist.
Yeah.
And then you discover, as long as you continue to try on watches, that you actually have a range. Me, myself, I'll wear anything from between a 34 to a 45, which sounds crazy.
Yeah.
But in reality, when you try watches on, you realize it's not that crazy.
Yeah.
No,
It really isn't. You're talking about millimeters.
Yeah.
Not inches.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And I've had the joy of being able to try everything from like some of the bigger watches look great. Like I think about like Panerai, for example, where on face value, it's, a big, dive watches, but they look great, and there's other watches, I think even like Ulysse Nardin, which is a little bit bigger than I would typically go for, but they're I think it was like their Freak X, gorgeous. So it doesn't have to be like small, dainty and unassuming. There's so much range, but ultimately people should just buy what they like. But it comes from being able to try on different things. And
Yes.
I think that's the one thing for me that keeps me excited about the watch industry. Is like it's a touch and feel and emotive industry. Like
really is.
you can buy something online and like you get it and you're like, now are you stuck with it? Or
Yeah.
you can go to the boutique, you can go to a meetup, you can go somewhere and like see what you like, figure out your style, then swipe your card.
Agree.
I want to talk to you about. I have an interesting conversation for us to get into, and I want to get your perspective, but feel free to share as well. As I was just thinking about this the other day, and when I was preparing for our interview, and I want to talk about so when you enter this industry, right, you kind of get a sense of what you like, and then you may gravitate somewhere else. You may come back. It's a process. I'm curious, what are some watches today that you love that you used to hate? And vice versa. Or vice versa.
I was gonna say, it really tested my memory.
Yeah.
Really tested my memory. Because my watch is like part like personal and like 90% like wrist shots. So I'm just like trying to like sift through what I've seen over time. I really have to think about that one.
I mean, I'll share one. And it's going to be funny because of the watch that I'm wearing.
Yeah.
But I used to hate the GP Laureato
Oh wow.
because I was like, nah, it's fake roll up. And then I tried on a GP Laureato
Yeah.
and I fell in love with it. Now I own a Royal Oak. Listen, it's not a Royal Oak, but I think the Laureato is a great watch, especially when it's complicated.
Yeah.
I love the Laureato Chrono.
Yeah.
I think it's a fantastic watch. And if you can compare it side by side with the Royal Oak, you can see the differences that stand out and why the two of them are special in their own right.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just my opinion.
If I can chime in, I would have to say, I mean, you guys know how many watches I have and how much crazy, weird, obscured stuff I collect. I think for me, I think I still feel the same. Like I still love all watches, but where my thought processes shift,
You still have that electrician's watch?
I gifted it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I gifted it to my brother.
Okay.
I gifted it to my brother.
So it's close.
So it's close. But where my thought process has changed, and I've said it, I was like, I wish that I could collect every single Rolex watch.
I remember you said that. That was a wild statement.
But now I realize what I meant by that. And it really was, I have no desire in modern Rolex. It's all vintage. And so as I continue this journey in collecting media and everything in between, and you have like this level of exposure, you go ahead and say, well, you know what? The modern stuff is very cold, and I want to kind of come over to where it's sunny. You know what I mean?
That's a great way to actually break that down. I think it goes back to your point about vintage and why, so many people are finding their way to vintage. There's something about these old watches that they were made in a time where you kind of value maybe the imperfections, right? In the sense that they provide character.
Yeah.
Whereas like a lot of modern watches is kind of all about uniform. The technology has advanced in such a way that the components or the parts that either might break down through atrophy or change over time no longer do this with modern. They've solved those problems. But those problems over time, if you hold on to these pieces, you realize they weren't necessarily problems. They were special attributes because of the materials that were used. It transformed over time. And I happen to think there's some value there.
Yeah.
And that's part of the romance, with what you see in vintage Rolex versus modern Rolex. Modern Rolex, the only thing you can do to modern Rolex is scratch it.
Yep.
That's really it. Other than that, once you polish it, it's going to look brand new.
Yep.
Vintage, it's it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
But is that because, and maybe again, production volume and quantities are a lot now, but is it because we're in the moment right now? Like, is someone going to pick up a vintage land dweller 50 years from now and be like, oh my God, this is so sick?
I hope not.
Yeah. You know what? I think with social media and the exchange of information and how fast you get it, I think, you know, those moments where you felt something for watches, I think it's over. I really, really,
it's over?
I think it's over. Part of the reason why I say that is because when you mention the land dweller, I think of when people discovered the oyster quartz. Remember when everybody was like, wait. So hold on, Rolex actually had batteries in their watches and everybody freaked out. And then for like people like you and I, we were like, dude, where were you at? Like that's, like, you know what I mean? Like it's one of those like aha moments. And then usually in those instances, it's coming from like an earnest place where somebody's actually excited and they want to like dive in more than what you see today. You ask somebody about a modern Rolex watch, you ask them anything about it, they're like, man, I only want it because my buddy told me to get it, or my watch
And that's
guy
what I
told
mean,
me.
that there's just no connection.
There's no
to
connection.
it. But, you know, to your point, it's always a possibility. I mean, I think it would just come from a different way, right? You know, there's also like the X factor that maybe these watches do change in ways that we haven't accounted for yet because they're still new.
Yeah.
And I also think it's about what it represents, right? Like going back to like the importance of storytelling. You think about, there's one story you told me about your time like managing like wait lists and who would get allocation for.
Yeah, what a fun time.
Yeah. And like that story of like, there was, I think he was like an explorer or something. And
Yes,
you know, and that notion of like, I have waited a really long time for this, or like I've really wanted this for a really long time, and this is what this represents. I think the challenge, like you mentioned about like social media, is like there is a lot of instant gratification and a lot of, you know, not thinking before you purchase something. But, you know, we're coming into a time where like, you know, scarcity is a thing. People are tightening their belts. People are really thinking about, do I need this? Do I want this, etc. And if it is like a big purchase, whether it's like a bracelet you've always wanted, or, you know, a watch you've always wanted, or marking a big occasion, like you really have to think about it. And it's that kind of contemplation. And I remember where I was when I did that thing. That's really going to carry, even though it might be a model that like everybody has, but it doesn't necessarily represent that to you.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, where do you stand then now, considering all of that, in terms of maybe the way I want to ask this? Let's say someone comes to you and they're looking for advice. You're an expert in the field. You've got an opinion. They value your opinion. And they say, Charity, you know what? Considering where the economy is and how tight things are getting, not only for me, but also clearly for the watch brands, where do I put my money? Do I buy something I really like, or do I buy something that holds value?
My big thing is I always think, don't try and use watches as stocks. Don't try and game the system. I think unless you're a professional dealer, it doesn't make sense. So if you want to put your money in an asset, invest in the stock market. That being said, if you want to buy a watch, the first thing I tell people is think about your budget and think about trying things on, because it's really important to figure out what your personal style is. What gravitates to you? What do you like? What does it make you think of? And if you sit on that purchase for 6 months, a year, even 2 years, like do that, because it needs to be right for you. It can't, like, the worst thing is to buy something that just sits and gathers dust, right? You want to wear something that you love, that like you're beaming when you walk into a room wearing, you know, you think about, and it's like, it brings joy to your heart. And I think that's what, for me, being around other collectors has really kind of come to the fore. And that would be the first thing I would say. It's not necessarily about buy something that you want to invest in long term, or like buy something that you like. It's about, you know, make sure it moves you and it tells a story about you.
And if it happens to move you and hold value, it's,
Hey, a win is a win.
Yes. I want to ask if I can use this analogy. If you were a weather forecaster, what would you consider the current climate of the watch industry to be?
Well, there is global warming. So much is happening. I think that my personal fascination, apart from just like watches and the models and all of that stuff, is like the business of watches, the business of jewelry, the business of fashion, and what is how everything is kind of interlinked. And I know Richemont has just had a really, really stellar quarter with their jewelry business. And so it's thinking through, okay, why is that happening? I always say this, people are always going to buy nice shit. People always like nice things, right? And so when it comes to watches, it's like, how do you capture that essence of like, you want something nice, you want something practical, you want something that's everyday, but then you also want to capture like hearts and minds.
yeah.
And obviously pockets too, but like hearts and minds. And so I think that the watch industry right now is in a place where it's really exciting because there is so much range. Whether you're into micro brands, whether you're into like big, like the Richemont groups, etc. Like there is so much range, but it's really tapping into what tells your story. And so I think through, for example, like we know like Papa watches very well, right? And that's a brand where it's, you know, a husband and wife duo, and they created something they loved, and it was inspired by their travels. So if you are someone who loves traveling, loves, you know, an independent with the story, there's something for you. If you want something with all the diamonds and all the bling, and you want to spend $50,000, there's something for you. And so I think in terms of where the industry is now, I think it's a great place in terms of like range and so much happening. The key is really going to be like how they translate that emotion into a purchase.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I kind of want to wrap this by asking you, what does the future hold for Pulse on the Wrist? What's next? What do you hope to do next, to accomplish?
So much. I think that I'm really having fun creating content and telling stories. And, you know, I'm really looking forward to meeting the folks that I speak to all the time on socials, and, you know, really getting deeper, particularly with, you know, some of the brands and the history behind some of the timepieces, and thinking about intersection as well. Like you know, the F1 movie just came out, and, you know, Damson Idris was like a big part of it. And not because he's a good looking man, but more so that, like, you know, this notion of like, you have this actor who's a real collector with like a really great eye that's wearing these, you know, IWC watches in the film, but then he's also someone who has a jewelry line. And like, that's not necessarily explored all the time. And so it's balancing this like really sick, really expensive watch with like really dainty jewelry that like tells a story about like his like Nigerian heritage, growing up in the UK, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm really excited to like unearth more of those stories and to be able to bring them to people. I'm excited to connect with people. I'm excited to go deep in terms of what's happening in, you know, the history and the heritage of different brands. But also I'm excited to see how like different parts of the luxury industry intersects. I'm such a big advocate of the fact that like there is luxury in the everyday. As someone who is very busy, and I know we talked about this earlier as well, like very busy, having a day off to do nothing is a luxury. You can't put a price tag on that. So like, how do you tell stories, and how do you kind of unpack some of those like everyday luxuries with the actual things that we have? So definitely looking forward to kind of telling more stories, definitely looking forward to being able to connect with people more, and also just kind of think through that intersectionality and how it kind of cuts across every day within the wider luxury sphere.
I love that. Charity, I want to say thank you for joining us this evening. It's been a lot of fun, very informative. And I wish you much continued success with Pulse on the Wrist. I know you always have a place here at Wrist Check Pod. You are WCP alumni and family. And I can't wait to see what 2026 and the remainder of 2025 also has for you. Because I know there's a lot of great stuff coming your way. For those watching and listening, you know where to find us. This has been another episode of Risk Check Podcast. We're on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, yada, 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 blah, 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 superniche.com, riskcheck.com. There are many and multiple ways to find us and engage the content.
Yes.
I also want to encourage you, if you're watching on either YouTube or Spotify, to hit the like button and subscribe.
Yeah.
Also, don't be afraid to shoot us a DM and ask us questions.
Yeah.
We're always there for the community. And
Subscribe to the newsletter on superniche.com.
yeah, subscribe. Yeah.
Yeah, we
get
need
all the
that.
information. You want to know about events and such? That's the way to find out. And we'll see you next week.
All right.
Deuces.
Peace.